Welcome back to the program. We're glad you stayed with us. This is the big story. Tonight, we are seeing some sort of a looming financial crisis in secondary schools across the country. This after the government delayed in releasing money meant for the free secondary school education. And Ali did speak to a couple of school principals and, of course, on condition of anonymity. The education cash crunch is now a status quo on the second time, according to them. The school heads are also linking the ongoing student unrest to the cash crisis. Let's listen into what they had to say.
We always get this money when it comes to second term. We always get this money late. Except after this time round, they tried, when we opened the first week, they gave us that 19%, which was not happening in the previous years. But this year they tried.
So I understand the students were also preparing for their end-of-term
examinations. Exam which started on Monday.
Yes.
And they are supposed to end by this Friday.
And you're planning to close down the schools on Friday. So where will that leave the students who might not have maybe completed the exams on time?
Yeah, no, the teachers we have tried just to fix that under dates, because the money which you are given under tuition where the exams falls was only 160 shillings per student, which cannot buy even a ream of photocopier or even the toners. The rest of the money was taken for textbooks.
Yes. Clearly you have a lot of challenges there.
A very big one. And that's why you are seeing even most of these students who are striking, especially because some of the principals cannot meet the needs of these students and even the teachers. Like the BOM teachers, we are not able to pay them because we have been had to charge extra levies. So we are just strict on this free secondary school money and no any extra source of income. And they have also taken the big chunk of that money back in the name of textbooks.
So are you connecting the current spate of strikes in various high schools to lack of funding from the Ministry of Education?
Yes, that is one of the reasons. They should not run away from it. Because most of the CEOs cannot run their programs 100% because of the lack of that money.
And principals are worried that if the money is not disbursed, then they might not be able to run smoothly the operations in their schools. In studio, still have Dr. Ferdinand Mbeche, an education economist, and Dr. John Mugo, the country coordinator of Wezo Kenya. Let me begin with you now, Dr. Mugo. You've had the sentiments there made by one of the school principals. Is it a bit premature to link the current spate of strikes with the lack of funding in schools?
Thank you, Yusuf. From where I sit, I think I wouldn't rule out. I wouldn't rule it out, but I also wouldn't want to overemphasize it. We know that a banning of schools and all that happens cannot be justified. So we know that school unrest happens mostly during the second term, and there are very many reasons that are linked to it. Now, the inability of the principal to provide for their needs, it could cause quite a bit of discomfort among the students, but it is also a very compromising situation because the principal now is like a parent. So imagine if you're a parent, you have children around the table and you cannot provide food for them. So we also are pushing them, I think, to the wall because if we know for sure there is no money, then we should release a directive either to temporarily close the schools or bring forward the midterm or adjust the term dates. But expecting them to continue keeping students when they have no money to provide for the students, then it's also pretty unfair. That said, I think the issue of school unrest, as I said, cannot be justified. Because what students need to understand is that when they ban a dormitory, when they ban a bus, that bus was bought by their parents and through a lot of struggle. Or that dormitory took years to build. So we are also now talking about ethics and values. What values are we seeing in our children? I mean, at home, when they the parent says they don't have this to provide, they don't go to the kitchen or to the bedroom and they burn it. So what we are seeing is really a complexity that needs to be tackled at various levels. But also, we are seeing the school mirroring what is happening in the society. So I think this is a behavioral complexity and moral decadence that is happening across the society, because mostly the school just mirrors what is happening in the society.
We're going to talk shortly whether this crisis is going to have an effect on the results, or examination results or performances of these schools. But let me bring Dr. Mbeche back to this conversation. And Dr. some of the principals of schools I've talked to, they're saying they've been transferred under the delocalization program by the Teachers Service Commission, and that they are, these new working stations that they're still required to deliver. I mean, they're going to be in a tricky situation, right? Because they're in a new working environment, and at the same time, they don't have the required funds to run the schools.
Thanks, Yusufu. I need also to emphasize that the process of the delocalization of the teachers as a policy probably, in my view, lacked proper consultation and lacked a comprehensive policy guideline in how it was going to be conducted. And in this situation where some of the head teachers are finding themselves because of age, some of them are at advanced age and they have not been out of the working state for a long time, that kind of psychological transfer has a lot of impact in terms of reorganizing the education system. In my view, what was supposed to be done, it required a proper consultation and a proper preparation process before the exercise was, before the policy was implemented. And now, with the current financial crisis in schools, we have had teachers who have gone to new stations, they are finding there is no money, adjusting and meeting the basic needs of the school in line with the student needs is actually a major problem.
Dr. Mugo, is this likely going to affect, performances in schools?
Yeah, for sure. When the inputs are affected in such an adverse way, then also learning is affected. When teachers are emotionally and psychologically affected because they do not know and they are stressed up about how to provide for the students, then we would also see learning getting affected. This means, for instance, that the principal and the deputy and others are stressed out. And so if the ministry and government can really try to remove these stressors that are there to the principals, then we can be able to hold them responsible and accountable for learning to happen. Now, we know that students are supposed to be doing exams so that they close next week. But now when they don't even have enough papers to produce exams, as we have heard Mwalimu there saying, and maybe some exams delayed, waiting for money to produce the end of term examinations, then this kind of stress really may see results dropping. What we know also is that learning does not happen just within a week or within 2 weeks. It is a process that started many years ago. And so also I think we should not be alarmist that we will see now a drop in KCSE results or KCP results this year because there was a delay of money. But that stability, that emotional kind of satisfaction that a teacher is supposed to have when they're walking into class or when students are learning is also very necessary in promoting learning.
Yes, and in line with that, Dr. Mugo, principals are now worried that if the money is not disbursed before schools close next week, the situation could get out of hand with the unpaid workers and suppliers. And now let's listen into yet another principal I spoke to earlier. I'm sure you faced a lot of challenges. Can you perhaps talk us through the kinds of challenges you faced because of the lack of,
challenges because of the lack of funds. We are unable to do anything. We can't pay the workers. We can't pay the suppliers. we are unable to cooperate totally. Yeah, we are unable to even give allowances to our board members.
So since the beginning of the year, how much have you received from the ministry, and what is the deficit? How much do you still expect from the ministry?
I can only tell you what we have received this term. Yeah, since the beginning of this term, we have received 546,000 because this depends with the number of students. Yeah, my students are about 314. Yeah, so we've received 546,000.
And that is not enough.
Yeah, 546,662. That is very little. That is, I'm telling you, is only 13% of the 30% we were supposed to receive. Yes.
Of course, the school principals, they're saying that they don't have enough money to pay their workers. They've not yet paid suppliers. Of course, been supplying various materials to their schools. Now, Dr. Mbeche, you've had that principal there lamenting, complaining, of course, highlighting all the challenges they're facing. Now, moving forward, what do you think should be done by the Ministry of Education?
So for that time, it is now the reputation principles. The ministry and the government has to urgently disperse. In fact, if possible, by tomorrow, the money should be in the accounts of the schools so that we can be able to have a peaceful transition in the course of this term so that we are able to conduct the examination effectively and then close honorably. Remember, we have a crisis in schools as we speak. We do not want to have injury on what's happening. So what the government should do urgently, and if Mina is listening, should disperse the money tomorrow. The crisis, look forward on Friday, the threat from the union does not happen.
And speaking about the ministry, let me bring Dr. Mugun to this. Speaking about the ministry, it seems like there's a serious communication breakdown between the union leaders and the Ministry of Education. At the same time, the ministry has remained mum. Dr. Mugo, what are you seeing in this?
What I'm reading, I think this seems to be beyond the Ministry of Education. Because remember, the money comes from Treasury. Yes. And then it is disbursed. So it is possible this really is just an issue. This is what I would suspect, that even other government institutions outside education are facing this. So the only issue now is if there was a cash crunch in a treasury, why then would they let schools that are handling thousands of students suffer? Because when you're a principal, 1,000 students are put there for you, then really you are helpless. So it is better to delay money for building roads or for doing other things to salvage the situation and always ensure that money for education is available on a timely basis, because this is a commitment the government made. The president has been very clear about his support to education. The ministry has capped school fees and other levies that are charged. So really the principals and head teachers have no other option apart from receiving this money from Treasury.
Dr. Ferdinand, the fact that these monies have been delayed, as we've already mentioned, that this money was supposed to hit the account of these schools by the beginning of this month, of this term. It is yet to happen 3 months down the line. What does this say about the seriousness of, by the government when it comes to education? Because this is something that have been highlighted not just by the ruling Jubilee, by NASA, I remember, especially during the campaign. It was like the major plaque in their manifestos.
Investment in education is actually a global concern, because human capital development is significantly very important in nation building. And as a country, we have made a commitment in our constitution that education is a basic human right. Given that it's a basic human right, then it implies it is the social responsibility of the government to ensure that the required financial resources are provided at appropriate time to ensure that our learners are able to access what we are calling quality education. So in my view, the lack of commitment and lack of seriousness from the government in terms of supporting the education agenda, which actually is very basic and which NASA, Jubilee have given a commitment. And as we are indicating, is that when you look at Vision 2030, Vision 2030 can be realized once we have clear investment in education and training. So the commitment of the government, in my view, need to be re-evaluated to ensure that we have more focus in providing the required financial resources that can be able to ensure that we provide what we may call quality education.
Yes, Dr. Mugo, there's one viewer here at Olelo who says this is a very unfortunate situation with negative socioeconomic ramifications. Do we really value our future as a nation? From your own point of view, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, this is unfortunate, affecting the future generation. We have made a very strong and firm commitment to education, as Dr. Mbeche says. So why then aren't we able to keep up with the promise we have made to our children? We know that we have been having performance issues, that right now for the last 2 years, exams performance really has gone down, and we have also raised concerns about learning. But how are we going to hold schools also responsible to ensure that every child learns if we are not providing the inputs that we have committed to? So this is, I think, something that needs to be evaluated, including even, Yusuf, going back to that proposal that was once made of aligning the school years to the financial year of government. Must the school year start in January? Because if then this second term will be affected by budget reading and the government years starting on July 1st, then really we are going to mess up the education system. And this is very unfortunate for our country and for our future generations.
Dr. Ferdinand, moving forward, we've seen the cash crunch now in schools. They're yet to receive the cash. Many people expected this cash to hit their account by today. That did not happen. Moving forward, what do you think needs to be done to make sure that we don't get to see this kind of a situation again? And you've rightly put it, education is a right for every Kenyan child. It's a basic right, actually.
We can evaluate our planning and policy guidelines. Once we have the policy guidelines, we have to ensure those particular guidelines have also the action plans, so that, like, if we are planning for first term in terms of disbursement of funds, we have to ensure by November, normally schools have actually approved the school budgets, so that in November, December, if the principals have the money, then they are able to plan during that particular holiday for them to ensure we have adequate supply of the school inputs. So that once students report in January or in May, already we have the educational inputs available. And that implies we need to improve the efficiency of our school system by ensuring that we follow strict planning systems that have timelines when the funds have to be dispersed. And we are saying that the funds have to be dispersed before schools open, to give the school management time. Remember, we have also the procurement procedure,
yes,
which has to be followed. So if the money is released, for example, in April for second term, then the school principals and the school management in general can be able to plan to ensure that they get in touch with their suppliers in good time, so that we have the school inputs available immediately the school open. As my colleague has indicated, that learning is not a 2-week event, it's a process. So when we talk about second term, and we have only 13% provided, and we have 17% remaining, are we saying that the 17% is meant for the 2 weeks? The answer is no. So that we are saying, in terms of moving forward, let us reevaluate our planning policy framework. Let us ensure that the minister and the government, by extension, makes a commitment to provide the required resources at appropriate time. Because unless we do that, as a country, then we are likely to have a very poor, inefficient education system that cannot prepare our learners the kind of graduates we expect after graduation? So that is a big question in
Yes.
terms of human resource development. So
Dr.
in my
Mugo,
view,
yes. Thank you.
we need to streamline our
Yes.
planning process to ensure that we do things at the right time.
Let me give the last word to Dr. Mugo as we conclude. Dr. Mugo, what do you think, let's be solution-oriented now, what do you think needs to be done moving forward?
First, Yusuf, we need to clear this mismanagement in the planning process. We need to be honest about the budgetary cycle of government vis-a-vis the school calendar. So how do we harmonize these two? If we are certain that really at the beginning of the year there's always a problem, then how do we align these two processes? Now, the delay of funds is really causing problems and even very many questions. For instance, then you also work with little, which means schools may have been forced to save the money, and they were operating on a very lean budget. So when the 17% comes, and there were savings that the schools made, so what is going to happen to that money? So these are questions that really we need to ask, but also we need to save our principles. If Treasury can do something so that money is in the account tomorrow, that I think is going to be a big boost to have a good closing of this term and transiting now to the last term of the year.
Thank you very much, Dr. John Mugo, for your input. Dr. John Mugo is the country coordinator with Kenya, and as well as Dr. Ferdinand Mbecho is an education economist. And of course, thank you, the viewer, for watching. Because we're watching The Big Story, and we've been discussing the financial crisis that we're witnessing in the schools as head teachers protest the delay of the release of this cash by the Education Ministry. Of course, we're going to continue following this story for you right here on KTN News. Many thanks for watching. My name is Yusuf Ibrahim. Of course, you'll be watching The Big Story right on KTN News. Up next is KTN Prime.